We're broadening out now to consider the metaphysical position that there is only the natural world and no supernatural entities or causes. And this blue planet is the symbol I'm using for naturalism. You'll see why shortly. Oppie takes CSR seriously, so he's used a definition for the supernatural that comes from there. And that's religious supernatural, I mean, not other sorts. And he says that if we know what a supernatural realm consists of, there must be a natural realm we can contrast it with. And if we have that, then we can work out what a minimal worldview would look like. One that has nothing in it that we don't need to explain causes and structures. So here you have a very complicated metaphysical structure with a supernatural realm, and here you have a simpler one with just natural stuff in it. This is Oppie's first attempt that he knows won't work at a minimal naturalist worldview. There are only natural causes involving natural entities. Just so you know these terms are out there, you can be a materialist or a physicalist, but you don't need to worry about that here. What it boils down to is that these causes and entities are what science investigates. Scientific investigation is exclusively about natural causes and natural entities, as opposed to supernatural ones. But this leaves plenty of wiggle room when it comes to minds and mental properties. It doesn't dictate how minds are distributed, and that's a problem because it allows for panpsychism. Everything has a mind, and pantheism. So you can add divinity, sacredness, and worship-worthiness. That means it isn't minimal. It could be pared down even further. So he has a second go, and this is it. Words and no pictures, sadly. Still saying that there are only natural causes and entities, but restricting minds and mental properties to organisms like us. And I wish philosophers would stop saying creatures. Creatures are created. But feel free to add various animals, as long as they have the right sort of biological bits, brains that do more than regulate basic functions. There's a very brief history of minds in evolutionary terms, let alone in age of the universe ones, and as far as we know, they're only found here. But there's nothing sacred or divine or worship-worthy. And note that the world doesn't mean Earth, it means everything. So that's a better attempt at a minimal worldview. Why? Now you can see why I like the blue planet. Remember way back in the mists of time, week 1 to be precise, you learnt that humans everywhere categorize the world the same way. Well, that is relevant to this. All human societies are naturalist in the same way. There are no humans without naturalism. What varies, then, are the add-ons. So some have naturalism plus a supernatural realm of entities. Some have naturalism plus a generous distribution of minds and mental properties. Some have naturalism plus divinity attributions to parts of that realm at least, like sacred trees. The crucial thing is that they are additions to naturalism, not replacements of it. Naturalism by itself is the minimal worldview because everyone shares it and there are no add-ons. We can define a minimal worldview then, but is it preferable? Can we do without the add-ons and still explain everything? All things being equal, less is better, but Oppie wants to know what the things are first. Minimality gives us simplicity. Simplicity is good because it gives the fewest theoretical postulates and fewest kinds or entities possible. You might have come across Occam's razor. It's basically this idea. But there are other criteria that matter more. You'll trade some simplicity for completeness any day. It has to be the best fit with the data you can get. It has to have predictive accuracy. The more accurate the predictions you can make with it, the better. It has to have wide explanatory scope. The more it explains, the better. And it has to fit with well-established knowledge. If you get results that overturn all of modern physics, there's probably something wrong with your results rather than all of modern physics. And that's an oblique reference to an annoying incident in 2011 with the results discredited in 2012. Neutrinos. CERN. Look it up. So is there anything we encounter that needs a religious worldview to explain it? Two types of phenomena are usually brought in here: miracles and mystical experience. This is where you'd look to religious histories, traditions, scripture, and authority for explanations. Because naturalism can't explain supernatural or non-natural phenomena. The slight drawback is that while naturalism speaks with one voice, religious worldviews don't. You don't have just one source for explanations, you have lots. All the major religions can appeal to history, tradition, scripture, and authority. Let's look at miracles. Oppie cites miracles performed by Buddha, Krishna, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Sakawaris Park, for whom I haven't found a Creative Commons image. They go from lost in the mist of time, really, until the present day. Oppie also considers anomalous experiences and alternative medicine. Why? Because we all know that some of these claims are inconsistent with established knowledge. Well, we all know that there's some fraud, folly, and exploitation. It's going on in some of it, so we can't trust the results. And all of this applies to miracle claims as well. Well, obviously they're inconsistent with well-established knowledge, or they wouldn't be miracles. And fraud is well documented. But we all tend to make one exception. The miracle claims of our own tradition might be genuine, but everyone else's are bogus. And this matters because there is nothing you can rely on to show that any religious worldview is superior to naturalism on its own. Only one can be right, and there are no obvious grounds for choosing between them. How about mystical experience? Oppie divides them into three types, which is quite useful. So you have possession, encounter, and tranquility. Their characteristics are ecstasy and enthusiasm, fear, awe, and compulsion, and fleetingness, indescribability, and passivity. How do you work out their evidential value? Here's the thing. They are types of experience that are common to human minds, but when they occur, they are interpreted differently. A contemplative Christian nun and a Buddhist monk are likely to have the same sort of experience, but the interpretation of it will be very different. Another difficulty is that mystical experiences can be caused by illness, drugs, sleep deprivation, and extreme fasting. Why does that matter? Well, all of these impair our cognitive functions or faculties. Probably faculties is better here. And that makes us bad at general reasoning. So don't try to drive or cross the road by yourself in those states. That makes their evidential value a bit dodgy. If your friend who's been awake for 72 hours tells you that he understands the secret of the universe thanks to an encounter with an angel, you're unlikely to think that's reliable evidence. Would you believe our healthy, normally functioning Buddhist monk? Okay, if you say no because I'm not Buddhist, that actually helps Oppie's case. But there are other reasons that take us back to CSR. Anomalous experiences are very, very common. Practically everyone will have them thanks to our intuitive or system one minds. They're set up to overproduce experiences of agency so that you don't die. The vast majority of these experiences don't get a mystical interpretation. That feeling you're being watched or that there's someone else in the house when you aren't and there isn't is your unconscious mind generating inferences like crazy to account for stimuli that turn out to be something else. But that leaves us with a question. Why would we carve out a particular subset of these experiences and say they are evidence for a particular religious worldview? Oppie thinks it's better to stick with naturalism alone and accept that there are hard-to-explain experiences, especially as science is getting better and better at explaining them. But let's end on a positive note. Even if mystical experiences have no evidential value, they can be tremendously important to the people who have them. One of my students, Dan Barron, wrote a master's thesis on mystical experiences as empowering. The standard view is that they can help bring about moral change and inspire people to live well. They can bring peace and make death easier to accept, and these are valuable outcomes that we shouldn't discount.